Welcome to Authentic Living and Loving channel, where trailblazers share stories of success, living to the beat of their own drum, in places that inspire and feed your imagination. Get ready to discover, explore, grow, and find your bliss. Here's your host, Dr. Jordan Alexander.
Today we've got Kate Jarvis with us and talk about a hot topic. This is the author of a new book, Menopause, Making a Long Story Short. I loved it. I loved that Kate stepped into this space about we're not alone, the whole sisterhood vibes, demystifying all the science behind it. Fantastic book. I'm thrilled to have her on board today. She was 50 and postmenopausal before she realized she had gone through the whole thing. And wondering what's been going on with my body. And it was like this eureka, oh my gosh, this is what's been happening. And for so many women, this is the case. And thankfully, Kate put this insight and this eureka to good use for all of us in this book. She's a professional. She's 51. She lives with her husband on a beautiful lifestyle property out in the Wairarapa. And she's got a dog, 2 cats, and we've just been chatting about the 21 sheep and how much fun that is to have to deal with. So I welcome Kate today, and I think it's going to be an absolute demystifying and hot conversation. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much, Jordan. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity, and thank you for the opportunity. I've really been looking forward to it.
That's so cool. Hey, just starting out, like I was doing a bit of research for today, and I didn't realize that menopause is affecting 1 billion women worldwide. Like that's such a big number, and yet it's like I remember when you put the post on LinkedIn saying that you've got this new book, the overwhelming response to the topic, to the book. I mean, you were surprised. Tell me a little bit about that.
I was really surprised because I guess the reality is every woman goes through menopause. Some are just more impacted by it than others. So it's a massive opportunity across the world, I guess, to be able to learn more and share more and understand more. I was really overwhelmed because of the response and also the number of people that sort of said to me, we don't know anything about it. And that surprised me as well, because I thought there is quite a bit out there, as I've said in my book, a lot out there actually. But I think that as women, we just sometimes accept things that are happening as just kind of being our lot, and we don't always seek to understand them or realize that there is knowledge to be found and some things that we can do to support our bodies going through this. So I was really overwhelmed by the amount of interest, the amount of people that have reached out saying that they would love to read the book, and those who have read it that have said they've learnt quite a lot from it. So yes, I was blown away by it, to be honest.
Well, you mentioned about the information, and it's almost like in this day and age with technology and Dr. Google, and it's almost too much. And I think one of the things that I loved about how you presented the whole topic was simplicity. And I was saying to you before we kicked off the show today, I learned so much that I didn't even know that I didn't know, because we can be overwhelmed with the amount of information. So I wonder whether or not, just in a simple way, we can even just set the bar here with the different stages of menopause, just so that we've got a bit of a framework and what is it exactly that we're talking about.
Absolutely. So yes, I was one of those people that was overwhelmed with the amount of information, because I did a lot of reading. There's just so much, so many people there are some great experts, but there are people who think that they're experts putting things out there as well. And I found I was getting really confused around things, and I was trying a million different supplements and things like that. And so I just thought to myself, as I started to talk to my friends that were also in that stage of menopause or perimenopause, I just thought, actually, there's got to be a way to make this a bit easier for people who don't want to have to wade through a ton of stuff and a whole lot of science and filter it all for themselves. So I developed a bit of a passion and a desire to do the book. But I guess in its simplest form, it's our hormones that have been keeping our cycle regular, keeping us on a reasonably even keel for most of our lives, keeping our body functioning well for most, that start to go on a bit of a roller coaster. So I was thinking about my last trip to Australia, where we went on 4 roller coasters in a row, and I ended up with a bit of mild concussion. It feels a bit like that when it comes to menopause. I think with the hormone
Totally.
changes. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and what I hadn't realized was that I think I had just kind of had a vague understanding of the sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone, but I just had assumed they were to do with reproduction, and that was it. And they do obviously play a really big role in that, but they just affect so much more of our bodies and our way we feel about things, subsequently our emotions, because they affect our brain, our gut. They have a role to play. So as that roller coaster sort of the ride starts, we start experiencing physical symptoms of that. And that can be the good old hot flashes, which has been one of probably the biggest issues I've had with the menopause journey. The brain fog, the more emotional state that we can go into, for some depression, it can really hit hard, and some women actually really feel like they're going completely crazy because we don't remember things the same as we did. It's hard to sometimes string a sentence together the way that we might have before, and yeah, to remember names, all of those sorts of things. So it's that hormonal roller coaster that starts in perimenopause, sometimes reaches its peak and starts to settle in that menopause phase, which is where things do start to settle at a more all-time low, as I say, and then into the post-menopause, where they are at their new low, and your body and brain and everything adjusts to that. That period can be a long time though, and some symptoms can go on and pop up. I know my mum, who's 78, still has the odd hot flash, certainly nowhere near what she used to, but there can be things that linger. So
Yeah.
it's a hormonal roller coaster and then settling to a new low that creates all these physical symptoms and impacts that we have to deal with.
It was interesting, as you were describing in the book around those hormonal changes, which you've just articulated, that it almost gave, as I was reading it, it almost gave me the evidence to back up, I'm not going crazy, or I didn't go crazy. But at the time, and I wondered whether this is like, is this just women, because we're like, well, what am I doing wrong? Or how can I control this or manage, and the way you're saying, there's all these symptoms. And it really is almost like a silent suffering. Because I remember the first time I would have been in my maybe 30s or 40s. And this beautiful woman that I worked with at education, she sitting in a meeting, and I just watched her literally from the neck. It was like a water line going up, and she just turned the color of your shirt. And I was just, and then the sweat started and everything. And I remember looking at her thinking, what the heck is going on here? And I'm a woman, people have heard of menopause, but to actually see it in action. And she would talk about some of the things about, being 50 something or whatever I think she was at the time. But I really couldn't relate to it as a younger woman. And now when I think, and I look back and I think of the things that I actually went through, it's so difficult to sort of engage in these, it would have been nice if we were able to talk to each other about these things. And so you've got a real sort of passion for bringing these things and these conversations to light. In the hot flush topic specifically, how would you go about having those conversations with women, maybe with younger women, with people just generally? I mean, does your whole office know about menopause and hot flushes now?
Yes, they do. Certainly, those who I work closely with know about it. And what's been really interesting. So I like to be fairly open, and so I will quite openly talk about I'm having a hot flush at the moment, or in a meeting I'll have a bit of paper or something that I might even just preface it and say, if you see me fanning myself, don't worry about it. And it's just the hot flash, and I'll say something about, good old menopause or something like that. But what I've found is that it has opened up a lot of curiosity, and a lot of the younger women in the workplace, and actually in my wider life, are really interested, because they want to know, well, they want to understand a little bit about what their mum's might be going through, and they also want to be a bit prepared for what they have coming in their future, albeit everyone experiences it so differently. But knowledge is so powerful in terms of being able to prepare. And there are things, on reflection back now, and based on what I've learnt, there are things that younger women can be doing to actually better prepare their bodies for this massive transition that we go through. Now,
Mm.
I'm not a medical expert, but I have learned a lot in my readings. And yeah, I think if I could go back, there's some lifestyle things that I would change and do differently. Mm.
That's really interesting that you say about sort of, it's almost like preparation for perimenopause, or preparation for, and not that, and again, going back to that, knowledge is power. And it's one of these things that I never learned about it. It's like money and balancing things that we never learn in school. It's like
Mm.
we have to get this conversation out there, because I didn't even realize one of the things that really shocked me, and it was me and Oprah, I guess, the whole heart disease risk. I
Mhm.
had never, I mean, talk to me about that. Like that's just off the charts. I had no idea how, because
Mm.
I figured it's all that, that whole woo-woo area. We're not doing that. But heart disease.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it absolutely. I think that, again, in my opinion, and what I've learned and reflected on for myself, that a lot of it is our lifestyles. And I guess there's sort of a chain reaction. Sometimes there's multiple factors that can amplify, I guess, the impacts of that life change of menopause. And so much of our modern lifestyle is just not conducive to healthy hearts, healthy brains, for longevity. And so there's a big impact on, like, our lifestyle, and can impact our hormones, and then that has an impact on our ability to actually deal with sugar in our system, insulin sensitivity changes, and that can lead to a whole range of heart issues, high blood pressure and heart issues, not to mention cholesterol. So yeah, it's a bigger picture, I guess, around the things that contribute to it, but absolutely, that risk heightens as we go into menopause. So that's why I think some of those lifestyle things, when we're younger, can just help set us up for better success in moving through that transition, and less risk of those more serious impacts.
Mm,
Now, again, I'm not a medical specialist, and there's all sorts of things, genetics and what have you, that play in the mix as well with it. But yeah,
mm.
absolutely, it's a heightened risk as we go into and through menopause.
The other thing that I mean, right next to hot flushes is the weight gain conversation. I think everybody's like, okay. And I know myself, I think I remember being on tour for Love Assist, and my two colleagues were saying, Jordan, you eat like a trucker. Like like food is my friend. I love food. I would eat, whatever. And had I known how much the weight would pack on and never, like it's there. And I probably, again, that pre-thinking about it, I might have been able to make some lifestyle changes. I just found that my weight gain literally just went like this. I think I gained over 25 kilos
Mm,
during that time. And my self-confidence, I could not fit into anything. I
mm,
I had to go out and get new clothes, and I begrudgingly, oh, I'll get, so the emotional stuff that goes around that. But then reading about it in your book, it was like, Yeah, it's just kind of like everybody goes through this. It's
Mm,
not just me being lax around
no.
going to the gym. I mean, that whole weight gain thing, what's your perspective on that topic?
Mm. It's a really a sensitive one, I think, for many, because I was actually talking to a friend the other day about this. Is there's almost a shame associated with weight gain. I imagine that men probably possibly feel, or some men might feel the same, but I think particularly for women there, and I felt that myself. So I've never been I suppose, a really svelte person, but I'd never been massively overweight. But absolutely like you, I found that from about 45, it just packed on and around that middle section. So that's the typical the typical place that women will say that they notice it. Even women who are very naturally svelte often will put on a bit around that, and that absolutely is to do with the estrogen, and then the impact on our metabolisms and the insulin, the ability to actually be insulin sensitive, our bodies to be insulin sensitive, and so it accumulates in those dangerous areas that can affect the organs. And I think the other thing is that in that um, what the unhealthy fat, I suppose, for around, because there is healthy fat that our bodies
Yes.
need, of course,
Yay
to
for
carry
healthy fat.
that's
Yay.
unhealthy fat around the middle. It's almost sort of becomes like a vicious cycle, because we just store more and more there, and then that's where you can get your the things sort of masquerading. A lot of what we eat, actually, our body treats like estrogen, and it sort of stores it. So it's a vicious cycle, really.
Mm.
But again, lifestyle changes can make all the difference to that. I've actually just discovered, just pre-Christmas, actually, a wonderful health program that I thought, oh, I wish I'd known about this a long time ago. But then I believe things happen for the right reasons at the right times. But
Yes,
yeah, I've for the first time, I've actually really been able to sort of shift that weight, and so that's been really exciting.
that's so
Uh,
good.
yeah, yeah. So
Um,
it is possible, but there is, yeah, I think that it's around thinking about health versus focusing so much on the actual weight. Yeah, because there is a negativity associated with it.
it is, it's that holistic picture, I think, like that's one of the symptoms, that's one of the consequences. But then, when you're looking at it, that big picture. And one of the things that you talk about in your book is all around the sort of horses for courses almost. You have to pick and choose the things that are going to work for you. I loved for me, the traditional Chinese therapies were, the herbs, the acupuncture, that seems to
Mm,
work, a bit of intermittent fasting. But it's almost like you're giving permission for people to go and, hey, look, there's a lot that you can do,
mm.
and it's okay that your solutions don't look like mine, don't look like hers, don't look like the other person's, which is really freeing.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important, because we are just so different. I mean, if I look at all of my friends that are experiencing menopause, we're all experiencing it in different ways, and different things work for us in terms of managing those symptoms and finding some relief, and sort of quietening the mind. So yeah, it is absolutely. But I think many people aren't aware of the options. So I guess it's around getting awareness of those options, and then finding out what works for you, and what kind of fits with your values and lifestyle, I think, as well.
And that's a bit of a try, suck and see, really. Try it, see if it works.
Yeah.
I'm really keen to sort of step into your writing journey. But before we do that, I just wonder, let's talk about sex, baby. Because it's the other, the hot flushes, the weight gain. I really think that listeners they want to talk about it. Maybe don't want to talk about it in the lunchroom. But
Mm.
what advice can you give around that whole topic, from the physical of what's going on through to the intimacy side, whatever you're comfortable with, Kate. But I just think it's just getting it out there.
Absolutely, yeah, and I do think that's really important. And I know in preparation for this, you had asked about what was the hardest thing to write about, and it was definitely that topic, because for some strange reason there is a feeling of I don't know. It's like, yeah, we often don't talk about that sort of thing, and so it does feel a bit vulnerable, I suppose, to talk about it. But it's those things that are freeing for people, because probably everyone wants to talk about it, but no one's going to.
Oh, and it's like, oh, this is happening to me. I wonder if this is, is
Yeah,
it just me? Is it just that I'm odd? Is it, and I think that's one of the things that I think you were aiming to get through from the book, is that whole, you're not alone, others are going through this. And I really felt that. And
yeah,
so that's why I wanted, I just wanted just a little tone that people can read more about it in the book, but just, a little bit of a, hey,
yeah,
what's going on down there?
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so I suppose a little bit about my perspective on it, and obviously based on some science and facts that's in the book there. But it's one of those wider impacts of our changes in hormones that we just aren't aware of and don't think about. But it does change things down in our intimate parts, in terms of the kind of flexibility of those parts, the moisture down there, so things can get dry, and actually the libido in general, because our estrogen and progesterone play a big role, and testosterone play a big role in that. Uh, we sometimes get where we just don't actually really feel like having sex anymore with our partners, or you don't have that same. Like, I found I just didn't have that same drive. I've always been quite a sexual person, to be quite honest, and so. And I'm in a second marriage with a wonderful husband who we have a great relationship, but it was really, really hard. And I think part of it too was a loss of confidence, because I had gained weight. I just wasn't feeling energized. I wasn't feeling great about myself. I was more emotional about things. Plus, with the physical changes down in our parts, the combined was just really challenging for me, because I felt like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? Why don't I feel the same kind of drive, or feel turned on in the same way?
Yeah.
Um, and and I was getting the hot flashes as well. I had quite a lot of issues with indigestion, so that the combination of all of those things. So I felt like I was, um, I still. I love my husband. And I find him incredibly attractive. So I still, we've still got a good sex life, but I just internally just didn't feel the same around it. And so I started to look at, what are the things that can help with that. And so there are things that can. I mean, some women find that HRT just completely transforms them in terms of a whole range of things, as well as the sex side of things. For some, it's around the things that boost the confidence and give you just that more level of confidence to just try some different things to change things up a little bit in that space. Communication. So yeah, it has been quite challenging. I have found there's a doctor in America called Dr. Anna Karbeka, who I have read a lot of her stuff, and she's created some products. So she has this wonderful product called Jolva, which has actually got DHEA in it, and you can use that as an oral that actually helps the moisture down there, and helps with the dryness, but also gives a greater sense of pleasure. So I use things like that.
Yeah.
Communication with the partner around what's actually going on, I have found really important as well, so that they don't think that there's something wrong with them. That
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good point. Like, why doesn't she want to have sex with me anymore? What have I done? Or what did, yeah, absolutely. It has an impact on their partners.
mm. And for some couples, it's been a more prominent part of their relationship, and others not so. So it's again different for everyone, but it's definitely something that is not talked about a lot and can be really challenging, and
Mhm.
can actually end relationships, to be fair. I have heard of that happening as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you should say that, because it's almost, again, it's one of those, um we know that every woman's going to go through some version of this, big, small, long, short, it's going to happen. And it's almost one of those, imagine being 20 something, having a call, well, darling, when I'm whatever, 40, 50 something, things are going to change. And it's almost like having that stability in that relationship to be able to go through those things, because men go through their own, what I like to
Mm,
call menopause.
they do.
But and it's like it's that strength of that communication, and getting that up front, and being able to have those vulnerable, but so important, if you can talk about it, you can get through anything, right?
Absolutely. Yes. The
Yeah.
communication is sometimes the hardest part, but so important. And one of the future books that I would like to write is all about that, actually, how to communicate, because I think there's the communication with friends, there's family, there's your partner, there's in the workplace, as we touched on before, and it can be really challenging. But it is often the key. So that's something I'd like to delve into and understand a bit further, and maybe help some people with, including
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah,
Mm.
well, that communicate, I mean, I don't want to steal the ideas from your next book, but I can imagine people, in meeting, have you gained weight? Oh my God, really, it's freezing in here, why are you sweating? You know, o- do you have any tips for people that are, like when I saw my best mate, sort of turn into a tomato? What are the kinds of things that you can say or do, or is there, where can you go in that space?
Yeah, and again, it's a tricky one, because it's about each person is so different. Like, I think some people, and maybe it's around finding out what people need, what people actually need, because for some it might be they prefer people to just ignore it and not comment or draw any kind of attention to it, because they're dealing with it, and it makes them more uncomfortable for someone to, even if they're offering empathy or or some support. So I think it's around finding out what a person might need in the moment. And that comes down to relationships and communication again. So again,
Mm.
I know that there's a one size fits all, other than, yeah, finding out what that person needs from the people that are around them.
Yeah, and I guess just thinking through, I do a lot of work in the diversity and inclusion space, and it's almost like this kind of feels like it's butting up against that space as well. It's that individual needs, it's the having the conversations, it's the feeling um okay to be vulnerable with your work colleagues. And there is an element of trust, I guess, that has to be fostered before, oh, hey, did you know I have a dry vagina? Like, I don't think that's going to be like the next,
It's
you want to go for coffee? Like, it's just never gonna happen. But it's like, how do we build? It's almost like that whole thing that you were talking about, that pre knowledge gaining thing,
mm,
before you're entering it, would give you so much, that forewarned is or forearmed, that kind of thing.
that's right. Yes.
So book number two will be widely anticipated then, because that'll be a really important space, I think, for people to learn to be able to have those kind of conversations. But let's go back to before book one. And
Mm,
I just want to understand a little bit from you about this writing journey, because part of the Authentic Living and Loving channel is all about sort of encouraging people to do the things that they want to do that are different and unique, and kind of having the courage to be able to go and
mm.
progress those things. So you went from, hey, I'm 50, didn't even know I was going through menopause in these last few years, and you've converted that into this amazing writing journey, and you're already talking about your next book. What inspired you to write?
Mm.
I think when we first chatted, there was like a sausage family involved, I believe.
Yes, there was. That was way back. Yes. Uh, so I guess when I was a kid, I liked writing stories, and I loved telling stories. I loved hearing stories, and so I had a desire when I don't even know. I can't even remember what sparked it. But when I was about 12, I decided I wanted to write a book on the and call it the Sausage Family. And I'd even drawn pictures of the Sausage Family. I can't remember now what their adventure was, but anyway, it was the Sausage Family. Of course, subsequently, there's been a movie made called, I think it's called The Sausage Family, and
Ah,
it's quite X-rated. It's quite X-rated, so it
oh my
wasn't.
goodness.
So my book wasn't along those lines. But I've always been a person, and my parents always often talk about this, that if I set my mind to something or I decide I want to do something, I'm quite driven. And even at 12, I decided I wanted to do this book. So I'd written it, and I had no idea about anything to do with writing books or publishing at that age, of course. And I remember ringing, I think it might have been Whitcoulls, and saying, how do I get a book published? And they said, oh, how many copies do you want? And I said, oh, about 10. And they,
Oh,
you know, they obviously knew
bless.
that they obviously knew that I was a kid, and they
Oh,
humored me, which was quite nice. And needless to say, I didn't publish any of those books, but I guess, yeah, I had the a desire to be a bit creative when it came to stories and writing from that age. Then when I turned 40, around when I was around 40, I had the idea of writing another book, which was around, because I'd had a failed first marriage, and I'd had about a 10-year period where I was single, and I had done quite a bit of dating. And so I thought about writing a bit of a humorous book around dating in your 40s. And I was going to call it 40 Shades of Dating,
ah,
kind of a play on the 50 Shades of Grey,
yeah.
but 40 Shades of Dating. And I did make a start on that, but it didn't go anywhere. And then a year or so ago, when I had done a lot of research around the menopause and understood a bit more about what was happening in my body, started talking to friends and hearing about their experiences, and the fact that they just had no idea about what was actually going on for them, and they didn't really know where to start in terms of how to find out. And many of them just didn't want to be having to read a whole lot of scientific information and 300-page books and things like that. So I started to think, oh, what if I could do something that simplifies it for people? So for those people who don't want to have to wade through a ton of information, can actually get some education without that's factual, but is not deep diving where they don't want to go. And if people then do, then they can deep dive. So that's what I just thought about doing. And then I thought, well, I don't really know where to start. And I thought, yeah, I can probably get a few words down, but I don't really know how to flesh out an entire book on something. And so I actually joined up with a course that a person called Sophie Howard runs, who's got several successful businesses actually, but one of those is in book publishing. She's a New Zealand based, she's a UK person, but New Zealand based now. And so I signed up to do her course, which was around publishing on Amazon. And so there's so many great, it really steps you through the process and helps connect you with resources and professionals that can actually help you, because I'm not a professional writer, I'm not a professional editor or formatter. And I thought it was going to take me so long to actually work out how to edit and format things and what have you. So it's sort of at the same time as working through this course, I just got started, because I thought I've actually just got to get started. And so I wanted to be making progress rather than trying to learn everything about everything and then doing it. So I've just learned as I've gone, really. And I did access some expertise from a place called the Urban Writers, who have freelancers that do editing and formatting, and they have professional writers on there too. So I did have some help and support, but I've done it myself as well. So I've sort of had advice and support, and some people to help me get started. I've had some amazing feedback that's helped me shape the book a bit further, from people in my life, my sister who's a nurse, and a couple of others who've got backgrounds in writing. So it's been a bit of a community really that's helped bring it together. And while is quite short, because it's intended to be that way, as you might be aware, or you're right, to yourself, you kind of start way out here and you kind of end up here. And that's the direction I wanted to take it in. So I'm still learning. I'm still learning as I'm going. The Amazon platform's an interesting one to navigate as a self-publisher. So there's lots of bits and pieces in there that you just have to learn about by doing and finding out about. But I love that. And so I'm still on the learning journey with
That's
it.
so good. That's so good. And I think it's really inspiring. I mean, you've said that your parents sort of said, once you put your mind to it, you'll do it. It doesn't matter if you don't know anything about it, you're going to get out there and do it. What advice or what sort of what could you say to listeners out there that might be thinking about writing a book, or they might be thinking about starting a business, or might be something, because this topic even of menopause is, I love the way that you frame it at the end, about the new journey, and it's a new chapter, and it's a new, it's a new opportunity. I certainly feel much, much, much more freedom on this side of the roller coaster. And yeah, there's still some, hey, listen, you're on this side of the, this side of the fence. But it's just such an opportunity. Like what can you sort of share for the average person out there that's kind of going like, oh yeah, maybe.
Mm. It is such an just on that point of the opportunity. What I've really realised is how we're at the mercy in our younger years. We've been at the mercy of our hormones so much. I just had not realised the way that our hormones drive how we think about things and then how we behave, and a lot of it is that really sort of basic instinct almost of finding partners, reproducing, all of those sorts of things. So when I think back to my teenage years, even, which they call because the menopause is often termed as the second puberty. But when I think back to my teenage years of puberty, and I was quite, as some people would call it, a little bit promiscuous.
Yeah.
Is that it's actually our hormones that are driving that, and so I think
Sure.
that yeah,
No
that
judgment, no judgment. It's the hormones.
yeah, I
Yay.
want control.
Woo!
But again, if there's more understanding for young women going through puberty, then if you've got that understanding, you're in a better position to perhaps make better choices, because you're aware that actually you do have a choice. You don't have to just be driven by your instincts. But yeah, so I think with menopause, we're not at the mercy of those hormones as much, because they've reduced and they've settled, and it opens up a whole new world for us, which is really exciting. So in terms of anyone who is thinking about wanting to share their experience or write a book, I think it's about knowing what is your motivator for it. Because if your motivator is simply that you've just got a real desire to capture something on paper, and you don't really care too much if many other people read it or buy it or what have you, because it's more about, I want to get this down and it's for me, then that will influence sort of the way you write it, as opposed to if you've got part of that, but you also want it to meet a need for a range of people. So it's more about the audience reading it, or as much about the audience reading it as it is about you wanting to get something down on paper, and approach it more as an opportunity to help people, but also potentially make some income out of it as well, which was part of my driver for going down this journey. Not the sole driver, but part of it. So it's around knowing your why, I think, for
Yep.
writing,
Yep.
and then being true to that, because that will influence sort of what you do and how you do it. But I would say just do it. I'm a bit of a fan that if you have a passion for something and you really, it's not just a whim, but you've been thinking about it, just get started, because that's what I did. I thought, what have I got to lose? Maybe a couple of $1,000. In the scheme of things, that's not much.
Not much for your dreams, really.
Not much for the dream.
If you're, yeah.
Yeah, but the opportunity I'll be missing out on if I don't do it, who knows? That could be endless. So I just say just give it a go.
That's great. That's the give it a go advice. I love that. Even just trying it, and you've demonstrated that in even in the sheep story, right? Like
Yeah.
we started before we today you were telling me about the sheep, and you've applied that, you got to share the sheep story, right? Um, you just you're giving it a go. And I think life is like that, right? Like,
Mm.
would you have sheep now if you knew what you know now? Would you
Probably
still
not,
get sheep?
no. Because you think that they're this low maintenance
They're so
creature that
cute.
can enjoy the lambs and what have you, and that is a lovely part of it, enjoying the lambs if you've obviously got a ram that you breed with the ewes. But yeah, they are quite a lot of work, and they're quite challenging to handle and what have you. So been a steep learning curve, and probably if we did know all of that, we might not have had so many, at least not had so many.
Absolutely. So giving it a go, just doing it, but recognizing there's going to be, implications, good and bad.
Yes,
But you're
absolutely.
learning, right?
Yeah. And
That's
there's a bit
fabulous.
of vulnerability that goes with it, I think, too, with well, with many things, but thinking about the book, because there is that kind of fear of, oh my God, what if people hate it? What if it's just, yeah, no one likes it at all. And so you have that self-talk, we have that negative self-talk often. And so again, if you're open to learning and open to feedback, just give it a go. And what's the worst that can happen? No
Yeah.
one likes it, well, at least that's a good learning.
Exactly. And I mean, even just the experience that you had when you were saying, hey, look, you're putting your baby out there, with this book, and people are responding. I mean, I read that and I was just like, oh, thank goodness somebody's doing, there's other books around, but the thing that I love about yours is just short. It's short, it's simple, it's to the point. There's tons of references in there. You can get more if you want, but it touches on, it kind of is holistic in all of the areas it's almost like a must read,
Mm,
because
thank you.
it's great. And so you didn't know how it was going to be received. You didn't know, but you went on and you did it. And I just want to shout out a little bit around the service ethos that you put around it. I know this is a shift in your, like, you're like, hey, what will this look like in years from now? Maybe you'll be a full-time writer. Um, but that drive that you had and it comes through in the book. There's a bit of humor, there's a bit of, um, uh, you know, what's possible. And there's a real sense of sisterhood. Like, and I love that. I love that. Yeah, we're all going through slightly something different, but it's almost like, I don't know if you find this, but when I walk down the street nowadays, it's like, um, if there's a woman of a certain age, I automatically make an assumption. And I know it's judgmental and stereotypical and all of that, but it's almost like, yeah, I see you. I know. I've been going, we've done the whole tomato thing. We're
Yes,
in this club now, and there's
yes.
something quite powerful in that. And you've captured that essence in your book, which I think
Mhm.
is amazing. And so I really felt included.
Oh,
And like I
wonderful.
belonged. So that was really, I thank you. So thank you for following your dream and doing your thing. Cause
Oh,
that's,
thank you.
yeah, it was super, super cool. Okay, so what next? So what next for you?
Yeah, so I am aiming to do two more books in the menopause, making a long story short series. So one, I'd like to tackle that whole world of supplementation and treatment. There is a fine line to walk with that, because obviously there's some sensitivity around some of that, particularly when you think about HRT and some of the controversies that have been around that.
Yeah.
So I'll be definitely accessing some medical expertise around those, because I think there's an ethical part to all of this, because I'm not a medical expert, and I certainly wouldn't want to be putting anything down based on my opinion. But what I will do is share some of my experiences with trying different supplements and things like that, because I've tried many, and even just some guidance around paying attention to where your supplements are coming from and how they're made, because there are actually a lot of, there's a massive industry now for supplementation, and not all of it is good. So it's, yeah, and it can be really expensive. So I just would like to provide a little bit more of a deep dive in some reducing some of the complexity, because one of the things I found, again, with reading multiple things, is just so many different supplements recommended for the same sort of symptoms, and it's really confusing. So I want to attempt to simplify that for people so they can maybe try a few things that they might not have tried, or at least be more informed around what they might try. And then the third, I would like to, at this stage, I would like to focus around that communication and how to actually have conversation around this, and how to ask for support and all of those things. Because actually a lot of doctors even don't understand menopause.
Mm.
And I've heard several horror stories from people that go to their doctor, and the doctor basically says, suck it up, it's just part of a woman's lot. And so it's really quite shocking. So
It it
you need
it
to
it
do.
literally that literally happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was
Oh my
in
god.
women's clinic here at Wellington Hospital, and I had an ablation treatment before I had had all this, so I didn't even know I was in menopause because it technically you got there's no more
Mm,
periods. So now it's like, oh, I can't eat like a trucker anymore because I'm 25 kilos higher. No idea what the hell's going on. I'm waking up in cold sweats. So it's kind of like, anyway, so now I've got this 25-year-old young intern because it's a learning hospital. And he's saying, oh, is there any chance that you could be pregnant? Like now, like this was a couple of weeks ago, right?
my
And like,
goodness.
and so, so it's in the records that no, because if you have an ablation, you can't get pregnant, and not to mention have a really good look, mate. Like what's going. So, and that is so confronting. And it's so, how can I have trust in this person who's sitting across the table from me if those are the things that are happening? So it's going to be a really tricky space, Kate, but really important, really,
Yeah.
really important to sort of even just the good, the bad, and the ugly so that we
Mm.
can step through that space.
And be able to advocate for ourselves and demand the attention from the medical professionals, because that just it's quite shocking that it's is less. Uh, Finding a medical professional that does understand and is empathetic seems to be less common than the other way. So, and that's only just based on the conversations I've had rather than fact. But it's a really interesting one.
Mm,
And I
mm.
think for people just recognizing that you don't have to just put up with stuff. There are things that you can try and that can help. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'd love
Oh,
to be
no,
able
that
to do.
that sounds great. Like, I mean, I'm very much excited to get those installments. So you need to get writing. Speaking of that, I mean, how do you manage the whole, because you're still, in the professional sort of world, and you're also sort of ramping up on the right. How do you just in a pragmatic way, how do
Yeah.
you juggle that?
It can be a little challenging because I have quite a long commute as well. So when I'm working in the city, it is quite a long day. But I do we're in a position where it's just my husband and I, and apart from the sheep and our animals, we don't have dependents. So I do have quite a lot of flexibility with how I use my time outside of the the workplace. And so I do dedicate. I've had to sort of get quite structured about this because I'm probably not a naturally really structured person, but I have had to get quite structured about dedicating time during the week and on the weekends to the book work, as I call it,
Mm,
because otherwise, yeah, you don't make the progress, and you find out that a year down the track you're still not where you want to be. So yeah, so I just plan my time, but I must admit I do find I still keep the balance. I still do my walks and get to do things around the property, and my husband and I do some things together as well. So I'm probably quite fortunate. Yeah.
fantastic. Oh, that's good. Well, I hope that you keep finding the time because we want to keep finding the time to read the stuff that you're writing. So that's really great. And you've got a little special for our listeners as well, which maybe we can dive into that before we conclude our time together.
I'd love to, yes. So at the moment, the books are available solely on Amazon, and so there is the print on demand option for paperback and the ebook. But I am doing a free promotion on the ebook. People will be able to go in and download it for free, which hopefully many people do. And even better if people could leave a review would be fabulous as well, because that's always really appreciated and certainly supports the positioning of the book on Amazon. But I would also like to offer, if people email me, and I guess we'll probably be able to provide my email address as part of this, email me and go into a drawer. I've got 3 physical copies which I will give away. So I'd love people to email me, and I'll let them know the date that I'll be doing the draw, and then I'll happy to send out the books to whoever the top 3 are that win.
Fantastic. That's so good. And yes, reviews are so important. So I've got to go and review your book on Amazon for sure. That's one thing I'll put on my to-do list. Is there anything else that you want to share before we finish up?
Is there anything else I want to share? I think just, well, thank you very much for the opportunity again. I've really appreciated it. And I'm really happy to talk to anyone as well. So if anyone would like to email me for a chat, I'm really happy to share a bit more. If they want to ask me a little bit more about my journey, I'm always more than happy to do that. And I just think that women have just got so much to offer. And I really want to be able to help people manage this phase of life, see it with optimism, I guess, and see the future as an optimistic future, and just know that anything's really possible for any of us. So that's my desire. So if I can help anyone with that, that's means a lot to me.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Kate. It's been wonderful sharing your life, your story, a bit about your work. And definitely an inspiration for others to live authentically. And I highly recommend it's heartful and lighthearted, Menopause, Making a Long Story Short. Thank you for joining us on the Authentic Living and Loving channel. If you've got a story to share that will inspire others, we'd love to hear from you. So until we meet again, I'm Dr. Jordan Alexander, encouraging you to join the UBU revolution. Let's all live a life we don't need a vacation from. Thank you so much, Kate. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching the Authentic Living channel. If you liked the show, please subscribe, like, and share. Sponsored by learningforlivingacademy.com.